My name is Stefan E, and I actually, when I was submitting this abstract for this talk, I was actually asking for a poster presentation, but I am happy that I get the opportunity now to make a talk about this. But we had some reasons why we were actually thinking about making a poster presentation about that. And before I really go into exploring that question, will human-AI interaction promote new career paths in game development and education? I would like to say a few words about those reasons. The thing is that I considered this topic, this question, exploring this question, a little bit off topic regarding a conference that has the theme money and games. For a very simple reason, there is no money in my presentation. There is some relation with economy, but it's not so straightforward, I would say, and it only comes in at the very end. And on top of all that, there is only very little content related to games. So, and also that comes in very late in the talk. So why am I even here then? That's actually the question. And the thing is, we came up with that question during various discussions at our lab, and when I say at our lab, I mean the digital psychology lab at the Institute of Psychology at the University of Graz. And this lab is headed by Manuel Ninaus, who is my supervisor. I'm the newest PhD student in that group. And we were having discussions about artificial intelligence, how it might affect education. And then we were thinking, how might this affect actually game development, or what opportunities might something like game-based learning provide in that respect? And what I have is not much more than some kind of ideas, one could even say some vague ideas, but this was basically the idea for this contribution. Come here with those vague ideas, because here are people who have a lot of experience with games, right? With design of games, with research in games, and much, much more, and then see what kind of perspective they could add to that kind of vague idea. And we were thinking, yeah, that would be maybe fitting in the kind of marketplace atmosphere of a poster session, but then there was only one contribution asking for a poster contribution, that was mine, and a poster session for one poster. Well, there is no marketplace atmosphere anymore then, so it's a talk now. But what I will try now with this talk in the remaining 15 minutes is actually to reenact this line of thought that led in the end to this kind of vague idea. And by sharing this thought with you, then being very interested in what kind of perspective you have on that, right? So that's actually the idea about the talk. I summarize, I wrap up this lengthy introduction. I don't have money. Yeah, well, I have money, but here is no money. I have little content on games. I have much more space. So if you find a space where games could be added, that would be great. Yeah. And so if you can add, yeah, except for the money, that you can also add that, but yeah. So I will start with that, and from now on I will stick actually to my notes, because I've already taken we have started a little bit late, but I think 4 minutes of my time is already gone. So I will stick to my notes now, and I will begin actually with the first one of those 3 factors about which I'm going to talk, human-AI interaction. Just one more thing before I go into my notes, actually. This is an illustration of what I'm going to do. So this is actually me in the middle, and I will try to find some kind of balance between these 3 things. Well, and human-AI interaction, I will try to explore this of those 3 factors by its presently most prominent representation. I'm afraid you maybe cannot hear anything about it anymore, but I will also say a couple of words about ChatGPT. And regarding the topic of AI, at least, because there were many things happening in the last year actually, but regarding the topic of AI, one could from a certain perspective say that the last 12 months really were the year of ChatGPT. After its launch in November last year, it took merely 5 days to reach a threshold of 1 million users. And one might take that as an indication of the disruptive potential of that kind of technology. But I would be cautious with that, because if you look closely on that image to the left here, you will see that those other online services, they are quite a bit older than ChatGPT. So there are other factors coming in here. So I'm not sure if that is actually the good image here. Maybe the image on the right is the better one, showing the disruptive potential, and that's the increase in speed of different AI technologies, the speed with which they could reach over the last 3 decades something you could call human performance. But back to ChatGPT, what's actually behind this still kind of rapid success of it? And there may be various reasons for that, but there may be also one boring and simple reason, that for some tasks it proved actually useful. So right after its launch, people started to use it right away for producing and polishing text, like for instance, producing the same text for different consumer groups. That's something that is said to work nicely. Some person even used ChatGPT to create a children's book over a couple of days, if I remember, over a weekend for their niece's birthday. Now, not even 1 year after its launch, you can buy dozens of books in German, so many more in English probably, about how you could use it to facilitate teaching and learning languages, learning computer programming languages, also to produce code for real-world applications. I will come to the limitations soon. And facilitating other routine tasks for generating ideas, brainstorming, and many, many more job-related and also fun tasks. I have also one example here how I used it to understand something statistics-related, which I have always been too lazy to think about myself, which is actually the only point I want to make here, because I don't want to go into the details here. The thing is, the question I would like to raise in the end is, I use ChatGPT. Actually, there is some error in there that is also kind of funny, but the point in the end is that did it actually help me or support me with my understanding and expertise with this statistical question? I know the answer. It didn't. I still don't know how to do it. So, and that's actually that part of limitations where I actually wanted to go, because we have heard about limitations of ChatGPT and AI of that kind, so we could also say large language models already today. There is the problem with social and cultural bias. We have heard about that. There is the problem with fabrication, confabulation of data and information. There is also the more philosophical problem with innovation, and I would invite you to ask ChatGPT yourself this question. Could an algorithm like ChatGPT have discovered something like wave-particle duality? That's what I asked it actually, and it's actually giving a pretty interesting answer, and I don't want to rob you of that experience, so you could ask it something like that. The things that are most relevant for my talk are actually the last 3 here. That's the lack of recent state-of-the-art deeper domain knowledge. So there's 3 qualifiers here that are important for us: recent, state-of-the-art, and deeper domain knowledge. Then also this lack of accountability. So if there's one consensus in this field of AI technologies and concerning ChatGPT, then it's this one. Whenever it's about decision making, there should be human expertise involved. And lastly, and most importantly probably for my talk, is the issue of over-reliance, including everything from impeding rather than supporting learning, the risk of deskilling, or even the loss of expertise. And when I was discussing that, or when Manuel was discussing this issue in our group or with other people outside of our group, then one question often raised at this point where we said something like loss of expertise was actually this one. Yes, but do we actually still need expertise if we have technology like that? Or a little bit less grave, yes, but will we still need that certain kind of expertise, like I was showing with my statistical question? Will I need in the future the expertise how to visualize the residuals of a regression line? Well, there are actually many good reasons why we should maybe be a little bit cautious with letting go expertise too easily. One of them I already pointed out, and that's the thing that authorities in the field have a consensus about, that the high quality of decisions of hybrid human AI systems depends crucially on the expertise on the human side in those systems. The argument against that is, yes, that's maybe the case now, but how will that change in the future? At least for now, it doesn't look like that will change soon. My actually favorite argument is the last one on the slide, and that's actually to reflect on one of the core goals, I would say, of education itself. So I will read the quote: "The ultimate goal of the field of artificial intelligence in education is not to promote artificial intelligence, but to promote education. In the end, our goal is not to create intelligent tutoring or stupid tutoring systems, but to create intelligent and successful students." Well, I do not agree exactly with the end of it, with create intelligent and successful, so not with the exact wording, but the rest of it, I agree with it very much. So, if we rather would not want to let go human expertise too hastily, but maybe first investigate how human AI interaction might influence expertise in its development, then it might be a good idea to reflect shortly about how expertise can be actually acquired. And it is not so that we don't know anything about that. So what I've put here on the slide are 10 instructional principles of expertise development by Elvira and co-workers. But for the sake of time, I will not go through them point by point, but jump right over to something more practical. And what certainly plays a role for the development of expertise, if admittedly I have to say that it's not the only thing that plays a role, other things play a role too, but this certainly plays a role, and that's practice. And just to give a little impression of how that practice is actually implemented traditionally in studies, I have chosen here, owing to my own colorful background, something from mathematics, something from physics, something from civil engineering. You usually implement this with loads of exercises. And just to give one impression, I had the opportunity once, so to say, to teach civil engineers technical mechanics for several semesters. And before I had almost never, because I almost had never done that before, I asked my predecessor, who happened to be the author of that book down on the right there, how I could do that. And he told me how he had done it for 35 years traditionally. And just to give you an impression, the students would be guided through 60 worked out examples over 2 semesters. In addition, they would make 200 to 300 exercises as a homework. One of those exercises could take 45 minutes if you were lucky. If you weren't or you made a mistake, it could take an afternoon or a week. And in the end, half of the students would pass. So that's how that was done traditionally. The important point here is actually, for one thing, there's a lot of exercises. The important point is actually a subtle point. It's the worked out examples. It's the textbook examples. And if you think about how deep learning algorithms, how they work, like we heard in Celia Hoden's talk on the side a little bit, but it was in there, how they are trained, they are based on texts that we provide them, on data we provide them. So if you would like to create specialized algorithms that could help you with civil engineering problems, then you would probably train it with examples of known problems in civil engineering, and you would at the same time quantify the reliability of those algorithms by giving it exercises for which exact solutions are known and see how accurately they are reproduced. And if they're not, then you would again go back into fine-tuning, feed more data into it, of those examples where you know the solutions, and so on. So isn't worked out examples exactly the thing that such algorithms, even if they don't exist now, will be predestined in the future to be most efficient to assist with? And if that is actually the case, and there exist algorithms, or become pretty soon available, for specialized purposes that can reliably help me getting all those exercises done, those 200 to 300, 400 exercises. But it is still the practice involved in doing those exercises that develops expertise. Then what could happen to the development of expertise? And if we need that expertise for high-quality decisions of human AI systems, then what would happen under such circumstances that such algorithms exist with those high-quality decisions? As one of our colleagues actually put it, this might at the end be only an assessment issue actually, meaning that the actual problem is the certification of expertise and not so much the practice per se. That again means that a certification of expertise in traditional assessment is based on task accomplishment and not on monitoring practice. The thing is that task accomplishment can be quite easily, reliably, and objectively measured. Practice per se, not so much actually. And in earlier times, without such specialized algorithms, there wouldn't have been any issue at all, because the argument was simply, you couldn't accomplish the tasks if you hadn't practiced enough. But now, I actually don't have to practice that much, right, to accomplish the tasks. Now I can get things done much more efficiently without engaging in all that exhaustive, tedious practice, right? At least I would say it is more tempting than previously when no such option existed at all. And now that it exists, what if I, for instance, because now I'm teaching statistics, not civil engineering anymore, if I wanted people, including myself, continue practicing, for instance, for developing expertise, although they don't have to do that, what could I offer to resist that temptation, or conversely, what could I offer to facilitate engaging in practice instead? 2 more minutes, 5 more slides. We will see how this works out. When I was thinking about this several months ago, I came very late in my life, unfortunately, across one of the works of Seymour Papert. And I had to realize, actually, that he probably solved my problem back in the 80s, so even before the time I was born. He tasked himself with the task to teach children geometry. And because it was Seymour Papert, he wanted to use computers, to let children use computers to teach geometry. And he came up with the following idea. Let the children program the computers such that the computers do something that is meaningful to the children. And the interesting thing at that point for me already was to realize that geometry isn't at the surface level of this idea. It's never ever there, actually. So how does geometry come in? You may probably know that he invented the programming language Logo, and in Logo you can command a little turtle. That's actually me trying to make something. Yeah, it's called a Koch curve. And it's a very bad example. You see again this problem with my laziness, because there are lines in there that shouldn't be there. So you can command a turtle, move forwards, turn to the right, and so on. And by moving the turtle across the screen, the turtle would leave a line, and you could draw objects. And that means by moving the turtle, you could, the better you understood geometry, geometrical relations of objects, the better, the more beautiful, the more complex images you could draw. After trying for myself to draw something like this Koch curve, I found out that you actually can draw something like this, Well, that's the point where I gave up. But at this point, I realized that Pappert's approach, although not being game-based learning, was actually an absolutely amazing example of what would in principle be possible with something like game-based learning. The learning goal in Pappert's approach, better understanding geometry, was neatly integrated into its mechanics. By mastering the programming language, you could come to an amazingly deep understanding of geometry, like, for instance, here, the fractal characteristics of many natural objects. Mastering these mechanics would at the same time allow you to immerse yourself in an activity meaningful. Drawing beautiful images. It's probably not meaningful for everybody, but for some people it can be. And as an object, in the end you would have the image. You could share that object. So in the end you could share it, discuss it, or even further develop it with other people. So this would fuel or satisfy the basic need of relatedness. And similar things could be said, so I'm cutting this a bit short now, about competence, relatedness, flow, and attractivity. If I would have more time, I would actually make some kind of exercise here, so I will not do that. But I told you that I taught civil engineers, you will get this as an homework. So take a game you really like, and then take those 10 instructional principles of expertise development, and then sit down, reflect on it, and probably you would realize, so I would bet on it, it's not gambling actually, because, yeah, I don't know, maybe it's gambling what I'm doing now, but I would bet on it that most of those principles would in some way be fulfilled by the game of your choice. But I will not go into that. There are many challenges ahead, so this is the vague idea we had in the end. If we could, what has been called this motivational power of games, then we would conclude that games actually have a potential to secure continuous ongoing practice, even under those modern conditions that we would not need it anymore for mere task completion. But when looking around at my university, at other universities, although Pappert's work is now 40, 50 years old, there is not a lot of playfulness and gamefulness to be found. So when I look into civil engineering courses now, physics courses, mathematics courses, it's mostly still the same thing that I told you, these traditional things. So some of those things have probably to do with the challenges that are still ahead. So that's why it's still awake, somewhat, and only a kind of an idea. But what I want to end is that maybe human-AI interaction with the possibilities that could be there in the future might provide enough selection pressure to give some old but still very good ideas the necessary boost. In the end, it might turn out that not only the future of games depends on economic constraints, which I think is obvious, but it might turn out that also the future of our economy, being increasingly built on a well-functioning relationship between human and machine intelligence, could depend very much on what we are able to learn from well-designed games. I think that's a good point to stop. Thank you.